Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants hangout today. My name is Joe Grabowski. I will be your host. I'm a National Geographic Emerging Explorer and a grade 7 science and math teacher. And we got some feedback from a classroom, but we'll take care of that. There we go. So I'm very excited today to be doing our first hangout of the year with the Ripley's Aquarium of Canada in Toronto, Ontario. We usually do several throughout the year, and we've done all sorts of exciting things like seeing the seahorses, feedings of the different sharks. But today we're trying something new. Today we're doing a feeding with Moray eels and groupers. And this is pretty cool. They've been specially trained to recognize and approach a target for their feeding. So it's going to be very interesting. We're being joined by Danielle and David today. David's going to do the feeding, and Danielle is going to take our questions and tell us a little bit about what we're seeing. But this is new for me too, so I'm very excited to see how things go. So first of all, Danielle, how are you this morning?
I am well. How are you today, Joe?
Excellent, excellent. So we have 4 of our classrooms in from different spots in Canada, and then hopefully we'll have a classroom from New York join us as things go on. But it looks like you're right there at the aquarium. Looks like David's starting to do something. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're up to today?
Yeah, no worries. So you can see this yellow and white and red. That is our target, the little square in there. Let's see if I can actually point to it. That thing right there is our target, and the groupers and the eel are trained to go toward it when they're hungry so that we can get a better look at them. Because if we just toss the food in, as you can see, the tank isn't that big, but it has a lot of areas for the animals to hide in. They do like areas to hide, so if we can't get a good look at them, we are not certain if they're healthy or not. So this is a great way for us to come and look at them. So today we have some yummy food for our wonderful animals. We have some mackerel, which is the stuff that's stripy, and then some herring. Oh, the eel is here. Thanks, Steve. So this is our only green moray in this tank, but we do have a couple in our big tank with the sharks. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And they're all trained to go towards, probably still hungry, that's why he's hanging out at the target. So what's really cool about all of the animals in here is that they actually like to live in small spaces. So as you can see, this tank isn't very big, but the animals in here are. So if you saw earlier when Dave was feeding, there was a giant splash. And that was one of the groupers sticking their head out of the water because they're really big. There's one below me. It's our biggest one. It's probably about 550 pounds, which is really big. And from this angle, it looks about 7 to 8 feet long. Pretty large animal. And they don't like big spaces. If you give them too much space, they spend all of it hiding in the corners. They like their small areas. So let's hopefully this guy will come up. Oh no, apparently that food wasn't that tasty. So inside of this tank we have 3 goliath groupers, which was one of the ones that just said no to the food. The big one is a Queensland grouper. That's the one that's moving right now, the huge one. And then there's only one potato cod, and that's the one with spots over on the side. That's how they got their name, because the spots look like potatoes. There's only one eel in here, as I mentioned before. And there are a bunch of fish. You might notice there's a whole bunch of tinier fish in here. And they are being fed a little bit of chopped mahi, which is over here. And the chopped mahi is just a type of fish called a dolphin fish, and then there's a little bit of pellets as well. And they are in here for one very important reason, and that is because groupers and eels cannot brush their teeth. So we put them in here so that the little fish will go inside the mouths of the other animals and clean them. Well, that was pretty cool. And the groupers, every so often you'll see them with their mouths wide open and the small fish inside of their mouth eating. And they'll go inside their whole mouth, around their gills, and the outside of their body to clean them up. Humans are really lucky. We get to brush our teeth and take showers and baths, but other animals can't do any of that stuff. So in order for them to get the food that they need, in order for them to be healthy, they actually get other fish and animals to do that for them, which is really excellent. And it's really cool to actually see that. That's called a symbiotic relationship where animals work together. and help each other out. And hopefully the Queensland grouper will come back. Looks like it's looking at the food again. And Dave was telling me that this tank here is fed 3 times a week, and they only go in here once a week to clean, and that is on Sundays. And he said that the potato cod is the friendliest of all of the fish in here. That's the one that's kind of hiding in the corner right now. Oh, he didn't want to eat that food. That's kind of sad. So groupers eat in a really cool way. So they have really, really big mouths, which means they're not picky eaters at all. They're not going to eat the vegetables, but they love all different types of fish and other animals that live under the ocean. They have lots of teeth that are backwards facing and pretty sharp, and in order for them to eat, they actually use suction to suck the food right into their mouth. So hopefully, if the Queensland grouper is going to eat this, you can actually see that suction happen. Yeah, right, like that. Now, because their mouth is so large, they can eat pretty much whatever they want, which includes small sharks and turtles when they're young. So they'll eat pretty much anything, as long as they can swallow it whole. This one's going to get hungry, too. So where we are, where you can see this location inside of the aquarium, that was the potato cod, by the way. You can tell by the spots. So this is the grouper, we call it the Grouper Grotto. It's a little triangle, and it's right next to the big shark tank. So when you go through the shark tunnel at our aquarium, a lot of people think that they're connected, and they are not. They are completely separate tanks. The animals cannot switch between the two. They just happen to be beside each other. But it's really amazing to get a chance to see this. Now, not all of the animals in here are found in the same spot. Most of them are found in the Indo-Pacific, but a couple of them are found in the Atlantic. So Indo-Pacific is just south of Asia and north of Australia, and the Atlantic Ocean is the east side of the United States and Canada. And that's actually where the goliath grouper is naturally found, and that is the largest type of grouper in the world. Our largest grouper is the Queensland grouper, though. The other ones are just fairly young. There's a huge fish there. It's huge. So Dave here is the one who actually takes care of these wonderful animals, so he gets to know them quite well, and he can tell them all apart. And he's also got a little clipboard over here, making sure that he knows how much each animal is eating, so that he knows they're being healthy and they're not overeating or undereating what they should be. And eels also have an incredible sense of smell. So if you see when Dave's feeding, he actually puts the food inside the tank and waits, because the eels can't see very well, but if they're hungry, they'll come around and take some food. And the groupers, same thing. They're coming around for the sense of smell. They're both pretty nocturnal animals, and they don't need to use their eyesight as much as their sense of smell. They come around to get some food. And I know the groupers are not that big of a draw when you come to visit an aquarium, neither are the eels. But just based on their mouth adaptations and the fact that they are one of the few animals that are comfortable living in small spaces and their symbiotic relationship with other animals are one of the main reasons that I think they're amazing. Now, groupers and eels are not doing the best in the wild. The Moray Eel, the green Moray Eel, is actually doing pretty well. We haven't actually figured out how to get them to reproduce in captivity, so all of them were from the wild at one point or another. And it doesn't seem to negatively affect their reproduction in the wild, which is awesome. So there's still lots in the wild. The groupers, on the other hand, they take a long time to grow up, and they're a common source of food. So they don't always reproduce as quickly, and we don't have as many in the wild. And they used to be, because they're so large, a sport fish. So people used to catch them and take them out of the water and say, "Oh, I caught a fish this big." And now there aren't as many this big in the wild anymore. So we need to make sure that we eat sustainably and choose food resources that can help our animals in the wild. Because hopefully we will always have fish this large in the wild, but that doesn't always happen. And one of the coolest fun facts I want to mention about Moray eels, before we turn it over to question period, is the green moray eel that we have in here, which you saw before, is not actually a green animal. It looks green, but it has brown skin that is covered in a yellow mucus. And those two colors together in the water make it look green, which I find really funny. And it actually helps protect them from parasites and other things on the outside of their body. So Joe, if you guys have any questions for me, and Dave.
Very cool, Danielle. Thank you so much. It's really neat to watch them come up to the surface, and I read about the way they feed with that kind of vacuum suction, and it's neat to be able to see it a little bit. And I'm glad the moray eel made an appearance at the beginning. Hopefully he or she comes back, because they're pretty cool.
Hopefully.
All right, well, let's meet our first classroom. We have Mrs. Steinhoff's class. They're in Guelph, Ontario, and they're joining us from St. John's School. I'm just going to turn their mic on. There they are. And they are a grade 4 classroom. And if you guys have a question, we're ready for it. Come right up to the mic so we can see you, right up to the camera.
Bryce? Mr. Grabowski, can you hear us?
We can hear you.
And can you see Bryce?
I see Bryce. How's it going, buddy?
Good. How would you get the sharks into the tank?
I think I caught that. How would you get the sharks into the tank?
Yeah.
So the sharks, some of the smaller ones are really easy to transport, but the larger ones, including the larger groupers, are harder to move. So we actually have cranes in the back to move them, and all of the groupers were moved into this tank before we opened. So it was a little bit easier then. And there's a backup area for the big tank with the big sharks. So this is the shark tank behind me, and you'll see there's like a cave with a little light area in the center. Let's see if I can do this with my finger right there. That's where the back area is for that tank, and that's how we can get the animals in.
Okay.
Over here we have special cranes and other equipment to help lift the animal up. And because they live underwater, they don't like being out of water for too long. So we have to be very careful with our animals when we transport them. Just so you know, our groupers, the Queensland grouper, came from Queensland and then was flown from there to New York City and then flown from there to Buffalo, where we have a holding facility to make sure it doesn't have anything from the wild or the other aquariums coming into our aquarium. And then it was trucked from Buffalo to our aquarium.
And next I
In a
have
special truck.
Is there a roof over on top of the tanks?
Is there a blue floor on top of the tanks?
no. Is there a roof?
Oh, a roof. Most of them don't, but this one does on the one side. You might have seen that. There's just a walkway because there's an electrical panel over there that we have to have access to. And that's the only reason that it's there. Most of our tanks don't have a roof. They're all open top, which means we have to clean dust out of all of our tanks.
And then just adding to that question, do you, in an open spot like that, do you use the lights to kind of mimic a proper photo period, like day and night for them?
We do, but not as much as would be expected. So during the nighttime, when we are closed, we turn off all the lights. However, we are open from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily, which means that the lights will turn off at 11:30 or 12. Which is not the normal amount of daylight time that an animal would be used to, with the exception of a couple of our habitats where the animals are really sensitive, like our live coral habitat. So that one goes on dimmers in the nighttime at around 7 p.m. and then in the morning it'll go on dimmers the other way, right before we open.
Okay, well, thank you for the questions, Ms. Steinhoff's class. We will come back, we will swing back, but I want to meet another classroom first. So let's jump over to Mrs. Diesel's group of grade 2s from Bradford, Ontario. Let me turn your microphone on. And if you have a question about the groupers or the eels or how they feed them, really anything about them, we're ready. Can you hear me, grade 2s?
You can. Just a second. Real quickly. Sorry, I think this is their first experience with doing this. They're overwhelmed. So you have to talk to them. Talking about.
How do you clean the tanks?
How do you clean the tanks? Did I get it right?
Yep.
So in our tanks at the aquarium, all of them are on filtration. So you can't actually see it because it's off on this tank right now so that you can see the groupers, but that pipe over there is where the inflow comes in. And then we have skimmers on the top of all of our tanks and sumps on the bottom, which will take out all of the dirty water. Now that isn't the best for taking out everything. So we have special vacuums that the divers go in with, and it's a vacuum tube so we can help clean out the water. And then all of the surfaces in here, although it looks like real coral, is all fake. And we have to scrub it all clean. So the reason that somebody goes in this tank once a week is to clean it. And none of our tanks are ever fully clean, but they're never fully dirty either, because we can only clean portions of them every time we go in, because it is a lot of surfaces.
Okay, great question. Let's check in if there's one more question from the grade 2s, or I can swing back. What would you like me to do?
No. Head to another class.
Okay, I'll swing back after we visit some of our other groups. So let's jump over to Mr. Rock's class. Turn their microphone on. They're joining us from Cambridge, Ontario, and they're a group of grade 5s at St. Anne's. Your microphone's on, and we're ready for some questions.
So what is the biggest animal in the aquarium?
Oh, the largest animal in the aquarium. So the largest one is actually the green sawfish, which is not in this tank. It's in this one over here, the lagoon. And she is 14 feet long and roughly just around 500 pounds, I think. And then the Queensland grouper is around the same weight and around 8 feet long. So it depends on what you're looking for. The longest animal is our green sawfish, but our heaviest one is probably our Queensland grouper at this point.
All right, go ahead with another question. I see someone up at the camera.
Has anybody gotten
Try that again, nice and loud.
Has anybody gotten bit by one of the animals?
Has anyone been bit by one of the animals?
No.
No. Our divers do hand feed the stingrays though, so those animals which have flat teeth do end up giving a little nibble to our divers' hands, but they all have all of their fingers, so it's not that big of a deal. And the zebra sharks apparently bite Dave. And I know that our tropical fish will try to eat the hair of most of the divers when they're in the tanks, but biting us is not something they're into. They do it as a, oh, I thought you were food, oops, kind of thing, and the animals in here are not going to go after us. We're kind of scary looking. The little fish might try to clean us, though, when we go in the water. That's what they like to do.
All right, so Mr. Rock, I can see you have more students up at the mic. We are going to swing back, but I'm going to meet our 4th classroom first. They are Mrs. Vick's group joining us, grade 3-4 split class from Fitzroy Harbour, Ontario at St. Michael. Let me turn your mic on for you. Okay, we're ready for you.
All right, we have Carter here with us. How many pounds can Goliath grouper get?
I didn't quite catch that.
How many pounds can Goliath grouper get to?
How many pounds?
Yeah.
Okay. So the largest one ever recorded was around 700 pounds. And they estimated that one to be around 50, but they don't really know how big they can actually get because, as I was saying, we've caught a lot of them, so their max size has been decreasing over time. So they probably can get around 800 pounds, especially the Goliath grouper, which is the largest. And they probably could get to maybe 100 years old. They live a full life.
All right. How big do eels get?
How big do eels get?
Yeah.
The green moray, which is one of the larger types of eels, can reach about 8 feet. And ours is probably around 5 to 6 feet. It's not as big, but that's the average.
All right, I'm going to open things up now. for questions from any of the classrooms joining us. If someone just comes up and I can see them at the camera, that's how I'll know to pick your classroom. And it looks like we have a taker in Mr. Rock's class. Let me turn your mic on. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, what is this fish or shark you have ever seen?
So Daniele's wondering, you yourself, not in the aquarium, but in the wild, what's the biggest fish or shark you've been with?
What's the largest fish or shark in the whole world?
No, that
Okay,
you've been with, that you've seen.
That I've seen?
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen that many big fish in the wild. I'll ask Dave. Dave, what's the biggest fish that you've seen in the wild?
The biggest fish that I've seen in the wild in terms of length. Well, I've seen whale sharks.
You've seen whale sharks. That's pretty big.
Whale sharks, yeah. I was thinking of the picture I think it's whale sharks.
Yeah, the biggest shark in the ocean is fish in the ocean is whale shark. And
That's
Dave's seen
right.
them. So, yeah.
About as big as a school bus,
100.
full grown, right? About 60 feet. Some of the really big ones.
They're really big.
Awesome. Okay, let's jump to Mrs. Vick's class. Your microphone is on.
All right, go ahead, Cam.
When you clean the tanks, are the groupers still in there?
That's a good question. When we clean the tanks, so the group are still in them? And the answer is yes. They're kind of hard to take out. They're heavy. And they're pretty friendly. So the most of our tanks, when we do clean them, we go in with the animals still in them, with the exception of our jellyfish. Because they're a little stingy. So we have to take them out carefully, clean the tank, and then put them all back in. It's a whole overnight thing. These guys are completely happy with having a diver in the water with them.
Awesome, thank you.
When the groupers feed and they have that little suction, is there any sound associated with it if you were in the water?
There's not much. I didn't hear anything. However, they do break the surface of the water, and they're pretty powerful animals, mainly because of their size. But they're really sneaky predators, so they would rather food come by and wait for it. So I don't think that they'd want to associate too much sound with what they're eating.
Okay. Our grade 4s in Guelph, Ontario. Miss Steinhoff, your microphone is on.
Do the eels have sharp teeth?
The eels have front teeth?
Do the eels have sharp teeth?
Oh, sharp teeth. The answer to that is yes. There's a reason that you don't ever want to hand feed an eel unless you're really, really experienced. They have really sharp backwards facing teeth, which means that they try to pull the food in really quickly. So eels have really tiny heads, so in order for them to eat, they have a second set of jaws that are in their throat. But when they open up their mouth, that second set goes to the front of their body so that they can pull the food all the way into their body. And they're very sharp teeth. So they can get the food in their mouth really quick on one try. And they usually eat things that are a little bit bigger than their heads.
Okay, and I'm guessing that they're probably an ambush predator as well, waiting.
They are also an ambush predator, yes.
All right, excellent. I can see our grade 2s have their question card up at their camera, so I'm going to turn on their microphone. We're ready for you.
How many baby fish do you guys have?
How many baby fish do we have? Well, the fish in here, the tiny ones, are not babies. But we do have a new baby at our aquarium. Oh, it's just around the corner. I don't know if I can see it from here. You see that circle? There's a tiny little thing in there. That's a baby stingray. It was born on Friday night.
That's cool. He's so tiny compared to the others. How quickly do they grow?
Not very quickly. We have some that are over 1.5 years old, and they are still not full grown. But they're born with all of the things they need in order to survive. So they don't have to worry about their mothers being with them right now. So they're just happy on their own. And they look like a tiny version of the adults.
Very
It's
neat.
pretty, I know.
It's pretty darn cool. Well, why don't I can see another round of questioners at their cameras. We'll visit each class one more time, and then we'll sign off for today. But this has been very cool, and actually it's hard to take my eyes away from the stingray tank, just watching them cruise by so elegantly.
It's true.
All right, let's start with Mr. Rock's class. Your microphone is on.
How long can the eels live to be?
Oh, that's a good question. How long can the eels live to be? And the answer is, we think around 20 to 30 years, but we don't know.
Okay, yeah, it's so difficult with fish.
We don't know, especially because we haven't been able to get them to reproduce. We don't know how old they are when they get here. It's just very challenging to know how old they are. We're hoping for a long life for them here at our aquarium. We are pretty new, so we've only been open for almost 4 years. So hopefully at some point we will learn how to tell the age of an eel a little bit better and more accurately.
All right, let's jump over to Mrs. Vick's group in Fitzroy Harbor. You're on.
All right, Salome.
How long have groupers been around?
For the question.
Do you mean at the aquarium or in general?
In general.
Okay, so Danielle, groupers, do we know when they kind of appeared maybe in the fossil record? How long have groupers been around?
Oh, I'm not actually certain. Dave, do you know how long the groupers have been in the fossil record?
Groupers and fossil. Oh, man.
That's a challenging question for the both of us. So just in general, I know that bony fish, which is what a grouper is, have been in the fossil record for 510 million years. But groupers, the modern ones that we know, I have no idea. And I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
That is a question for the internet.
Questions like that are good times to do a little research and practice. So that's a good challenge for the classroom. Look that up. Awesome, and a good question. Miss Steinhoff, we're ready.
How many fish do you have in your aquarium?
That's a good question. So how many fish do we have in our aquarium? And well, because we have babies all the time, we don't really know the exact number, but it's around 16,000 different animals, which is about 400 to 500 different species.
That's amazing. That's a lot of fish
A lot of
and
animals.
other species to worry about and keep track of. But you guys have an amazing facility. I know from the visits that I've had, it's a beautiful, beautiful aquarium. And actually, let's see here, because our classes here are Ontario classrooms today. Let's hear you nice and loud, classrooms, if anybody there has ever visited the Ripley's Aquarium of Canada in Toronto. Has anybody ever visited?
Woo!
So our Guelph class, there's some in our Cambridge class, lots of hands in Cambridge class. And a few hands in Fitzroy Harbor. Very cool. Okay, and then let's check in with our grade 2s. You guys have another question?
How many eels do you have?
We only have one in this tank here with the groupers, and that's the green morays. And we have 2 in the lagoon over there. And then those aren't the only types of eels we have. We have American eels as well, but they're in the Canadian waters area, and there's 10 to 15 of them. And then we have some animals that are mistaken as eels, like our one electric eel and our wolf eels, but they're not really eels.
All right. Well, one more quick question before we sign off for today. And this is just about, you mentioned babies at the aquarium.
Yeah.
And the breeding. Are there any endangered species that you guys are involved in, like a breeding program with at the aquarium?
Well, the spotted eagle rays, which I think are actually classified as threatened right now, but it would be a little bit worse because we don't really know how many species there are. They will be hopefully breeding once they are all mature, but right now only the female is. So that's one of them. And the other one are sand tiger sharks, which are also in the threatened category. And we are encouraging their breeding to happen here, but it hasn't seemed to have done anything except for mating behavior. However, at our holding facility in Buffalo, we've teamed up with the Georgia Aquarium to look into how we can hopefully facilitate sand tiger shark breeding in a captive environment, because they have yet to reproduce in a North American aquarium. So we're hoping for the best, and we have special tanks. There's one in Florida, and there's also one in Buffalo that have water that is mimicked from the ocean, so that we can actually see if it's something to do with the natural world that is actually going to trigger them into having some babies. Because right now, all the sand tiger sharks in North America were all born in the wild. And that's where we got ours from. They might have come from an aquarium at first, but they all came from the wild way back when we first got them.
Okay, well, Danielle and David, thank you so much for our first aquarium hangout this year. It was great to see the groupers, and 550 pounds, that's pretty darn impressive. We will be joining the aquarium again on the 26th. The camera spots are filled, but anybody can watch live via YouTube, and you can find the link on the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants website. And we will be seeing some zebra shark training, which we did a couple times last year, and that's always exciting to see the zebra sharks coming right up to the surface. So
it's really awesome.
Yeah. And then I think I see Miss Steinhoff up at the camera.
No, I just haven't figured out how to turn it around yet.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. All right. Well, that was great, and I'm so glad the signal was so great for us today. We got to look right down into the tank. I'm very much looking forward to the zebra shark hangout. But before we sign off, I'm going to give the classrooms a chance to say goodbye and thank you. So Danielle, one more time, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Oh man, it was my pleasure.
Excellent. All right, here come the microphones. Boys and girls, nice and loud. Thank you to Danielle and David. Excellent work. You guys never let me down. All right. So from Ripley's Aquarium of Canada, thank you so much. We are signing off for today.
Thank you.